Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to the Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Spoor is over. It's time to unleash your animals.
Przyszłam zgłosić morderstwo. Co to jest do cholery? Co pani robi? Patrz! Sarny.
Jakie ślady?
Racic. Sarnik zapewne.
Jak pani myśli, kto mógł je zostawić?
No chyba zwierzęta, prawda?
Okay, Andy, Spoor, or, as they say in Polish, Pokot.
Isn't it funny having a movie with a title that in English sounds like it's for... Like, I'm sorry, I suppose I knew what Spoor was. Yeah. I had, when I was a kid, my dad took me on some hunting trips. But it's not a word that I use in conversation very often, but...
Wait a minute. What is Spoor relating to hunting, please?
Well, it's the leavings behind that animals leave, so that, like if you're carrion. Hunting... Or poop, or footprints, or any of that sort of stuff, right?
As you can tell by my question, I am not any sort of hunter tracker.
It's also like the smell, which I think we get in this film, kind of the leaving behinds of the beetles that,
pheromones.
Stuff like that. So I think that's kind of what it is.
Spoor was intended to be.
Yeah. Which is interesting because it's different as a meaning from the pokot title in Polish.
Which means what?
That is more of a term, a hunter's term for the count of how many kills you had that day. Which specifically comes up in the film at the end when they're looking at kind of the flashback of the photo, and you see them with all their kills, talking about how many kills they had. And included in that number are her two dogs.
Okay. That was, we should talk about that later.
And the book title, because it's totally different also.
The book title's totally different than everything else. The book title is Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, which comes from some William Blake poetry, which was a central part of our protagonist's effort in the movie. Her pastime is translating William Blake into Polish. So that's where it comes from. Here's the thing about this movie. It's the third of our little mini-series here on the works of director Agnieszka Holland. This one is directed by her and co-directed by her and her daughter.
Right, Kasia Adamik.
Yes, which is great. Good for them. What a strange little family project, this movie. I'm not going to lie to you. I had a tough time in the middle of this movie. I feel like this is one of those films that I deeply enjoyed until I didn't. And then I took a break and found I was a bit addicted to it. I was addicted to how it unraveled at the end. But that middle block, we get a middle block that's all about the killing of the animals. And it was tough to watch. I guess I go back to that, D. Wallace, who once said about us, you guys are a bunch of wussies. And I kind of felt like that at this movie. I feel like I have adjusted to a lot of different kinds of horror, but watching the wildlife getting themselves shot, didn't care for that.
Well, it is good to know that no animals were actually killed during the making of this film. All of that was pre-existing footage that they had filmed of animals combined with CG work to actually make all of those kills look like they were actual kills.
That is, that is a project that I think if you're a visual effects artist, that is the project you want to be on, because you get an assignment that says, we want you to make cutting edge effects of an animal getting shot from a distance in the woods, and then we want you to degrade it and make it look crappy. That's your job. That is such a job. That's a job you can do while watching, Real Housewives. You don't even have to put all your brain to it. It's a cakewalk. Beautiful.
It's funny because it's to a certain extent, it's the exact same thing that they do with people all the time, right? In war scenes or disasters, whatever it is. It's just one of those things. They've gotten really good at creating living beings and then basically making them look like they are dying on screen.
And
it's a strange part of the art form.
It is a strange part of the art form for sure. But that all underlies the big question. How did you end up liking the movie after you watched it? Because you hadn't seen this before, right? This was your first viewing?
I had not. Correct. This was my first viewing of this film. It's a little tricky to get here in the States. It's a film that, it's harder to track down because it just never got any sort of distribution here. It is actually streaming in probably about 5 different countries around the world, and then it has other distribution in other forms, probably in another dozen or so beyond that. So it's definitely accessible. It's just not as readily accessible, especially here in the States.
Every now and again, we like to just say, you know what? If you're in the States, just go pound sand. Go see this. This right. one's for you. Rest of the world.
That's right. That's right. So I went into this knowing it was probably not the sort of film that would find easy U.S. distribution, and so I think that helped me in my approach of the film, because it's definitely a different type of movie. It's not basically a straight up crime thriller, which is kind of what it's pegged as, right? It's kind of this older woman who is an animal lover, kind of trying to figure out that why these different people are dying, all hunters of one form or another, and she starts saying that the animals are doing it, and it's an interesting exploration. I ended up kind of liking it. It's not my favorite of Holland's films that we've discussed, but I found it to be a really interesting story in the way that it wasn't just a straightforward telling of a story. Because I think if you look at it as a pretty straightforward crime thriller, it is a little lacking. What I think Holland brings to it is something that isn't that kind of straightforward type of storytelling. There's this mystical element that you end up finding in the way that our protagonist is. I mean, right out of the gate, she's giving us astrological readings pretty much,
Yeah.
And that's definitely an element of the story as we get to know this really interesting woman who, I find to be a really fascinating character. I was mesmerized by Dušeko. I found her just spellbinding. Well, I can't wait to talk more about her performance by Agnieszka Mandat. But I think the film itself, it was the addition of kind of this mystical element that kind of was brought in because of the way that she saw the universe, and also the way that the film builds to its final moments, which is something else that's very interesting to talk about. So there's a lot more going on here than just a straight up crime thriller. And so I think that it's never going to be a successful film, I think, if you're just looking at it as a straight up crime thriller. But I think if you kind of see it with some other aspects, you can find more to it.
Would you classify it then as an activist film?
That's an interesting perspective. I think that there could be some element of that. I think that there are a lot of artists and filmmakers who view themselves as activists. And so I don't put it past Holland, who certainly seems like the sort of person who likes to push buttons, likes to kind of look at difficult subjects and approach them with perspectives that aren't necessarily the norm. I think that element can make it seem like she's a bit of an activist and that this is a bit of an activist film. I mean, the reviews certainly seemed to kind of come out that way. I think that some of the media outlets in Poland said that Holland had made a pagan film promoting ecoterrorism, which Holland just delighted to and wanted that on the poster because she thought it would attract more audiences.
And that doesn't surprise me a single bit because I get the feeling after watching her being interviewed over the last 3 weeks and seeing her experience as a filmmaker, it very much feels like she chose this project because she is the protagonist. And how well she cast Agnieszka Mandat as Dušeko because it feels like she has a perspective on things and she is a zealot in making that perspective known.
Yeah, Holland said this was at the New York Film Festival. She described the film as an anarchistic, feminist, ecological crime story with elements of black comedy and magic realism.
It feels like a lot that was shoehorned into this movie for being such a largely sort of silent kind of meditation on wildlife and landscape.
Yeah. Right. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. It's not a perfect film, but I really like that she was doing something different with it and trying to kind of push it into different directions. At the end, I think that there are some elements that if you're buying into it, it probably will work fine for you. If you're not buying into it already, by the time that you have the police character who is her buddy who pulls open his laptop and pushes the magic button that creates like basically an EMP and kills the power everywhere so they can escape, you're not really into the movie. And I totally would understand.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, apart from that middle section where I just had a sour stomach at watching some of it and kind of, it was already late at night and I took a break. I went to bed and I came back the next morning and I found myself really into it and I really loved the end of the film. I loved the way things unraveled. I loved the way they turn it on us because I was one of those who did not know that she was the one, right? I didn't get it. I didn't believe it. I thought that they would figure something else out. And honestly, I expected it to be kind of an Ari Aster, oh, look, it is magical animals and it's horrible. And we didn't get that. We got this, it was a true story. This is how it played out. And from what I understand, largely it's the experience of the book. And that's when the whole magical realism of the EMP in this town, which is not great with technology, right? They barely have cell service anywhere. And suddenly they're able to make that happen. That's where the stars fell. I didn't buy it. Even though the rest of the end, the ultimate resolution, and I think some of the beauty of the artistry of the camera work at the end of the film, I think was just perfect. Those were perfect sequences. I wasn't with that.
Well, I guess it's worth talking about then. We may as well just talk about it now, because my question was, when that happens, are we, and because we go to this, basically it's a fantasy ending, right?
Yeah.
Her dogs are alive. They're all having this idyllic dinner with everyone there, plus a new child, and everything just seems so perfect beyond belief. And then she goes outside. She's, running through the fields with her 2 dogs who are alive now, that we had seen had been killed earlier in the film. And then they kind of fade out of the screen and leaving just the landscape. That really made me feel that, you know what, maybe we're seeing a wish fulfillment of an ending, and everything at the EMP point and beyond is really kind of how she's wanting everything to go. We have some really interesting flashbacks throughout the film that we see in kind of like very, very colorful. The images are the colors just pop when we go to these flashbacks, whether it's her flashback or other people's. And I feel like they're not necessarily flashbacks. I feel like they are her vision of what she's seeing as far as in that person's past or in her own past. It's kind of the way that she's seeing the world. Mm-hmm. And I can't help but feel like the ending is another one of those, where now all of a sudden we are kind of witnessing kind of her view, her hope of how everything is going to go at the end of the film. And at that point, when they're stopped at the police, we never get to actually see what the resolution of the film is. Maybe they're arrested right there. Maybe that's the end of the film. But in her mind, it's not that. In her mind, they escape and have a happy existence outside of that.
That's interesting. And it plays into the fact that we don't actually know what happened to Janina, because she evaded capture. And that's as far as the book ends, is my understanding, that we don't know what happens to Dushenko. And so it would absolutely fit the narrative that we move into Fantasyland and let us sort of resolve out of that. I actually don't mind that. And I don't mind the way she fades out. I think it's an incredibly artful way to communicate this sort of uncertainty in her experience. And I liked it. I really did. What I didn't like, and what I think was not sold well, was the fact that her police officer friend Dizzy actually has some sort of power over the city that I just didn't anticipate and I didn't buy. And I think we could have gotten away with everything had we not taken what I see as a shortcut, using technology as a shortcut to get around a tricky plot hole. And I don't like that. I feel like that was everything, all the other flashbacks, all the other experiences that she's been having. I think all of that is earned in the film. And I came away really satisfied with how she portrayed this character, how the character was treated, and then let down when they introduced what I know you will delight when I compare it to a Big Fish kind of an ending. Big Fish, one of my favorite movies. It is one of those experiences where you're kind of in and out of these fantasy stories, and this is not that movie. Big Fish has already done that movie, right? Munchausen already did that. I didn't need the sort of that sort of superpower. I didn't buy it.
That element. I mean, they could have ended exactly the same way and just had them stop at the police. We don't see that whole thing, and we just kind of assume they got away, or we just see the police let them by because they didn't hear the word, or whatever it could have been. It didn't have to be that,
Yeah, it is flippant, right? It is. I think that little piece is uncharacteristically flippant for a movie that has tended to be over the last 2 hours completely, sort of sober.
Yeah, I don't know if it's completely sober. It's pretty. I mean, there's definitely elements of craziness in the film. There is the black comedy. There is kind of strange happenings. But I do largely agree with you, though. I think the point is that element, the fact that he's got this strange technological button that can wipe everything out power-wise, so they can drive away and get away scot-free. That really doesn't make any sense.
The last couple of hours of the film, we actually get, I think, a really smart discussion, sort of narrative discussion on these various cultural collisions as told through this story. And, not the least of which is sort of young versus old, right? This older woman who is essentially kind of put out to pasture, sort of. I mean, she is volunteering as an English teacher. All the kids love her, but she's the kooky old lady who comes in to teach English. We get a dose of religious conflict, religious versus spiritual versus atheist. We get conservatives versus liberal. We get liberty versus authority, man versus nature, for crying out loud. The whole film is man versus nature. These sort of the vectors of approach of these conflicts that are portrayed in this movie, I think incredibly elegantly make it for a very satisfying watch. And again, so my use of the word sober might not be not be on the money, but I do think it makes for at least an attempt at addressing the complexity of what happens when communities are thrown into uncertainty like this.
Probably politically at the time in Poland, I feel like Holland probably knew that this would be pushing some buttons with the way that the country was going, and the way the world was really going by that point, right? And I think that it really makes a lot of sense the way that she uses this as an opportunity to really push those buttons and really kind of look at these different things. It's not always smooth. Sometimes I feel like it's a little on the nose, like some of the elements with the priest, who is just so kind of the stereotypical, like hard-nosed priest who, believed staunchly that man was man and animals were meant to be subservient and all that. I think some of the caricatures of these characters was a little strong as far as the way that they were played. But
you'll notice, Andy, all of the broad portrayals, they sure got theirs in the end.
Yes, they did. They sure did. Well, and that's an element that I think is also worth kind of talking about, just the way that what we're portraying here and all of this discussion, all these points you were just talking about, religious versus atheist, conservative versus liberal, man versus nature, how does all of that fit in when you're doing this sort of crime story, and when you're having a director like Agnieszka Holland come in and tell the story with those points? And I think that's what she was really liking about the opportunity with this story. But I do think that it's something that does make for a more challenging film to get distribution. And as we already pointed out, it couldn't even get distribution here in the U.S. Was it just, with all of these points, does it feel like too European, too much of that kind of foreign movie that just kind of the U.S. barriers just doesn't allow it to kind of get through and have conversation about?
I don't think so. And I think if you put David Fincher's name at the top of a movie like this, it blows up as a global phenomenon. It's another, or it's another Gone Girl, right? It's not like we don't have movies that have taken on complex sort of sociocultural issues like this in a horror context.
Well, I mean, you're looking at a 60-some-year-old woman as the protagonist, who also is a little insane and an astrologist and killing people.
You think that's too European?
It just strikes as a film that might be hard like for US audiences to really find they click with. Especially when it ends with such a mystical way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you're right. That's what does it in.
That's that EMP, damn
It's
it.
the EMP. I think so. I think it's a challenge, but I do think that it's not for lack of trying. And I think the cast, I think this story in the hands of Agnieszka Mandat and again to Wiktor Zborowski as Swiatopek, they are really good. They are so easy to watch, and they do hard things in this movie with absolute aplomb. They have their conversation smoking weed on the fire is one of those transformational moments in the film, and it's exceptionally difficult to watch them discuss his history, his family history, and laugh about it, and watch the subtlety of his turn as he starts talking about the truth. He is just an amazing performer, and she is an incredible foil. And there is a lot of weight on their shoulders to keep this movie moving forward and maintain interest.
Well, that's what I loved about this film. I mean, I said all that stuff earlier about, being too European. I mean, it's obviously a little cheeky because I do enjoy this film. I think that there's some really interesting elements in this film to enjoy. And this is what you're talking about is absolutely one of them. The way that this story unfolds with Duszejko and Bigfoot, and then you get Boris who comes in, and you have this strange little kind of love triangle that we have going on with these older people, I found to be just really fascinating. And the way that she kind of gravitates to Boris, but you have this like kind of this broken heart with Bigfoot as he's really drawn to her, but sees that she's being pulled by this other guy. I just found these people to be so interesting. And anytime they were having these slower moments with these conversations, I'm like, this is why Holland directs films like this, because you have chances to really, have some interesting character moments with these people that you wouldn't necessarily get if somebody else was trying to tell a story like this. And you're right, the story that Swiatopek, as we kind of, she's like, well, that's quite a name. With his name, that's why I think she calls him Bigfoot. The way that he tells that story, it is really kind of just heartbreaking, the way that he's kind of spun this fiction about his life and how tragic it really is. I mean, it allows for a lot of moments, and you can tell that people in this part of the world are still really dealing with a lot of the grief and suffering that they had gone through with kind of the period when we talked about in the past two films with Holland, with In Darkness and Europa. I mean, there was just so much terror and horror that people suffered through with the Holocaust and World War II. Looking at it through these eyes at a much later point in life, as you're seeing it told in this crime thriller story that also has these other interesting elements, I found it to be really fascinating.
Yeah, I did too. I think they did a fantastic job of communicating sort of the heart. And it made me think that, one of the things that you pointed out last week was that Agnieszka had spent so longer than the Holocaust itself, making movies about the Holocaust, that she was done. But, watching this movie, I realized that maybe she's not done. Right? Maybe she's not done just sort of, existing in the emotional space, if not the literal sort of historical space of communicating just sort of the narrative of that time in history and there's sort of the ripples in the pond that continue to impact generationally. And I thought that was just beautifully handled in this movie. I think it was great. So whatever shortcomings I end up having about sort of the big fishification of the movie, the fantastical elements, I think the non-fantastical elements were handled very well. I think in particular the setups that she, the way Holland manages to demonstrate the mechanics of the things that Duszejko was keeping, right? The parts of animals, and then later how she used them as footprints to kind of create this image that it wasn't actually a person who murdered all these people. It was the animals exacting their revenge. And it wouldn't be the first time. And she starts going through the litany of court cases decided in favor of animals being, the murderers. It's just sort of delightful. So even as off the deep end as she gets, I think they've successfully kind of given her a story that's believable to the end.
Yeah, I think so. And just another point. Following up on your Holocaust point, I thought it was a really interesting element for her to bring into this film when she meets Boris for the first time, and he introduces her to the Cucujus hematodes, the little red forest beetles that they have there. And he's got the line, "The death of the Cucujus hematode larva, it's a Holocaust, and nobody knows about it." And I'm like, how interesting that in a non-Holocaust film, she is still finding a way to discuss Holocaust, discuss ending a species. I found that to be really interesting. Yeah, to kind of continue that. It's not just people that have to be part of the Holocaust. I thought that was an interesting element.
The other thing that I was sort of musing on, and this is kind of a high level thing, but I think the film has a perspective on this, which is the what we see in the film about power and authority, right? Who has it in the film? Who wields it in this mountain community? And what is the perspective on like coercive authority versus just sort of, I don't know, the just raw power, like police power. And there are some funny scenes that communicate that. Anytime she goes to the police and is totally disregarded, the way the police kind of operates is, I think, comical. You look at some of the black comedy elements that you were talking about. Their conversations demonstrate, I think, repeatedly that they have no intellectual authority over the town. They have very little coercive authority over the town, and even less so persuasive authority over the town. And in fact, the chief was on the take with the guy who runs the horrible, horrible hunting reserve next door to her land. And I found it was one of those moments like we've had last time. She does an incredible job setting me up to feel like, oh, man, I hate loving what she's done here. I hate feeling an affinity toward the comic parts that I know are just awful.
She does smartly blend kind of that comedy with it, and gives you some really interesting characters to meet. And just, I don't know, I found the characterizations of some of these people, like I can't remember his name now, the guy who ran the farm, the little fox farm, that guy, and then the mayor. Just like, I found them to be really interesting characters. Again, sometimes a little too straightforward, too on the nose. But on the whole, what kind of an interesting way to kind of give us these people in this strange little community.
It was shot again. We talked a little bit about this, but it was shot beautifully by Jolanta Diluska, who is a returning character, a cinematographer, and Rafal Paradovsky. And we talked about Jolanta last week with In Darkness, and right. I found it interesting to look at just the opposites, right? We get this, she has to spend, however long they shot in the sewer, and now she gets to shoot in a field. And I think she did an incredible job sort of balancing those things and throwing drones in the air and giving us some unique perspectives on the landscape that I think were refreshing parallels to, or refreshing sort of sequel to her visual experience within Darkness.
Yeah, and I mean, both of the cinematographers had worked with Holland before, and I feel like this was possibly, of all the films, what my favorite cinematography of her films that we have looked at so far.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about Jolanta last week, but and I really like what Jolanta and Agnieszka did with the darkness in the sewers. Like, I felt like they really captured just this raw, authentic, real darkness down there. But the way they captured the forests, the way they captured, like, there's one particular shot when you see the old man, he's standing out in the darkness in the trees, snow is coming down, and he's only lit by like the car's headlights. And just the way that the lighting played in that scene was just beautiful. Like, throughout, I just kept finding myself mesmerized by images from the film. It was stunning to look at, just really, really effective in capturing really kind of this world of Duszejko and how she saw nature as this beautiful, beautiful thing that needed to be appreciated. It just felt like we were really seeing the world through her eyes.
Well, and her eyes and the use of landscape, I think, was super compelling to me. Like, she gave us a sense of these woods that was unique, right? It was a new experience for me. We don't get to spend a lot of time in Polish mountain woods, and they felt different, and I think they were captured incredibly well. These big wide shots, these shots that felt sort of impossibly tall for being portrayed. I mean, what I was looking at was just a 16:9 distribution of it, but the way she captured sort of the height of these trees that seemed to just go up and keep going up like they're legs of a giant spider, right? They're just nothing on them, and these little tiny kids like walking this little class kind of traipsing through the woods. I thought that was incredibly effective use of frame and just beautiful additions to the film all around.
Not to mention the fact that we see it over so many different seasons.
Yeah.
And we get to get a real sense of these woods in spring, in winter, in summer. And it always feels a little different.
What'd you think of those little chapter breaks, too?
I loved the chapter breaks, the way that they were defined by the hunting seasons.
Yeah.
Like, that was really genius to kind of give us that sense.
And gross. Yeah. Genius and gross.
Yes, truly.
The writing credits go to actually the novelist, Olga Tokarczuk, and Agnieszka Holland, who I guess worked together on the adaptation.
Yeah, I believe they did.
And I think they did a lovely job. I have not finished the book yet, so
you've read some of it, though, so at least you can get a sense of how it was adapted to make this, and you feel that they did a pretty fair job of taking it and adapting it.
Yes, and I will say I'm cautiously optimistic that this opinion holds true throughout. That I feel like the adaptation, I think, works. It tells a story. I think the book itself is actually it is more beatnik, I think, than the experience of the movie. It actually really kind of it leans more heavily into that side of Duszejko that I think we don't see quite as much in the movie. So
gotcha.
I really like that part of the character. So it was fun. It was like, that's my kid's grandma.
Yeah.
Also, I hope she's not a sociopath murdering hunters, but it is what it is. So and to that point, I did have this little twinge at the end. All these hunters end up dead, and yet at the same time, like, anytime where you're presented with this, where these hunters are doing horrible things horribly, and they're demonstrated as horrible people, because not all hunters are horrible people. Let me just say that. Right. That these hunters are presented as if they are horrible people or stupid people. Right. They're either those two, and that's the perspective of the film.
And men, white men,
totally,
in
white
this
men,
particular part of the world at this particular time. Yeah, so I think all of that rolls into this.
Very uncomplicated set of cultural sort of rules that define who these targets are. And as I'm watching that, given what all of these guys did, at any point did you find yourself thinking maybe these guys didn't suffer enough? Is that gross? Like, maybe did you want them to have to squeeze into those fox cages and be beaten on a little bit? Just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I like I said earlier, my dad, when I was a kid, took me on some hunting trips, and they were always very hard for me. Clearly not born to be a hunter.
I did not know that your dad was a hunter.
Thousands. He's not anymore. It's just one of those things that I think that he did because friends did. And I remember once he took me and my sister out to hunt rabbits. And I just felt horrified by what he was doing. And then, we would have to go out after he shot them and grab them, carry them back to the car. I was horrified by the fact that when I did that, all the fleas from the rabbit started jumping onto me because I was warmer than the rabbit at that point, and it just freaked me out. And then when I was older, it took me on a hunting trip to hunt deer, and that was, you're riding in a little four-wheeler through the woods with a dead deer next to you. It's just these moments in my head burned there permanently because of these trips. I'm like, I am not that person who can go out and do that. And I mean, I know a guy here in town. I've worked with him a number of times. He's, very hardcore hunter. And the way that he views it, I can appreciate, because he is going out to hunt for food that is something that will sustain him. And it's better. It's not full of all the chemicals that they pump into the animals that you buy at the grocery store. And it's much healthier for you, et cetera, et cetera. And there's an element to the hunt and everything. And so I feel like, he's doing it in a way where I can appreciate, because at least he's doing it because it's sustenance, and I don't think he's doing it quite to the extent where every part is something that he ends up using in one way or another. But still, I can appreciate that he is actually doing what I call authentic hunting. It's not just big game hunting just to have heads on his wall or anything.
Right. He's trying to use every part of the buffalo.
I do find hunting to be something that it's such a difficult thing to talk about, because I get really frustrated with big game hunting. Yep. But at the same time, I've heard, there was this great podcast that walked through it all, and I'm totally going off on a tangent now, but it talked about the realities of it and the two sides of why it happens and why you do that. And I was like, I can totally see that other side. I don't like that I can see that other side, but I think that there is some logic to it. It's just horrible, and so it's one of these things. I'm not part of that world. And I find the way she portrays the people here as the hunters very just their archetypes, just straight up, straightforward cardboard cutouts of the type of people we don't like. And the fact that they hunt makes us like them even less.
Yes. And I absolutely agree with everything you just said. And the fact that I have a sour stomach watching it or thinking about hunting only means I'm not a hunter. I totally get, I get why it is, it's a recreational part of the lifestyle. I get it. For others, it's not me. But the movie, the Agnieszka Holland cinematic universe presents us with hunters that are horrible people, and that's all we get. We don't have the gentle, conscientious sort of way of the mongoose sort of hunter here. What we get are the horrible, drunk, grandstanding white people in power, using that power to influence and gain more power, and then kill things.
Right. You do it in a way where they can do it where they're not supposed to, when they're not supposed to. Yeah. I mean, all of that. And killing things they shouldn't even be killing, like her dogs.
Yeah. That was awful. Now, I would say on the just visual presentation of the reveal, that transition to the photo, from photo to life, was super compelling.
Yeah.
It was great. It was gross and horrible, and I was on the edge of the couch watching as it moved into the still photograph, and then the hair on the dogs started to move. And then the people started to kind of move around. I thought that was beautifully, artfully constructed.
It was done really well. I will say that I knew exactly what she found when she was looking at that. I mean, it all comes from when they go into the dead neighbor's house because he had died, and she finds that. And I felt that was an obvious giveaway when she sees it, and then we never see what it is. I'm like, oh, she just found evidence that this guy was involved in her dogs getting killed.
I didn't see it. I thought there was going to be something else, but I did not. I was not along with it.
I didn't know it was a photo or whatever, but I knew she found something like a collar or something that.
I wonder if that would have been a different experience for you on the big reveal, the big fishification of the end, if you didn't know that, or if you didn't know that it was a thing. I don't know. I actually think we feel kind of the same way about it, so I don't know why that would change anything.
Yeah, I don't think it would change anything.
I am the example of what that's like. Yeah, so.
Kasia, her co-director, Kasia Adamik, her daughter, we did mention. It's just worth noting that that it was kind of a very collaborative director on this. She is a director in her own right who has done a number of different projects, a lot of TV, as I kind of look at the work that she's done. Lots of different TV projects, Absentia, The Border, 1983, just tons of different TV work. And
say it. You know there's one you have to say. She didn't direct it, but she was in the art department.
Oh, Battlefield Earth.
Battlefield Earth, Andy.
That's right, yes.
It's one of her known fors. How do you not say that?
I know. I had skipped past that. I had forgotten that I saw that, but yes. Yes, she worked in the art department on Battlefield Earth. Don't know. She was a storyboard artist. Yeah, she did a lot of storyboard art. So working with her mom all the way from the mid-90s on Total Eclipse. She worked with Baz Luhrmann on his Romeo and Juliet. A lot of other different things through all the way in Darkness. She was actually still doing storyboards with her mom on that film. So. I really loved the score to this film. I thought Antoni Lazarkowicz did just a beautiful, beautiful score for this film that had just a nice feel throughout. I thought it worked really effectively all through the film.
Yeah, it was nicely paired with certainly the community. You know, it felt very much like it was a score that people who lived here would be listening to.
Yeah.
You know, like insofar as it fit what was going on the screen, I felt very much at home with the score. And, you know, it's off of, you know, In Darkness, too. We've talked about him In Darkness, and it was just sort of a very different approach to what we got with In Darkness, which was super environmental and not listenable.
It worked really well for the film, but didn't feel like something you could tune into outside of that. Whereas this one really feels like something you could tune into
totally
outside of the context of the film.
Yep. How to do it award season?
It was it was okay. You know, it received 8 wins, 15 other nominations at the Berlin International Film Festival. It was nominated for the the Berlin Bear, which is the best film. It was nominated for that, but lost to the film On Body and Soul, which is an interesting little film that I believe was nominated for Best Foreign Language Film over here in the States. It did win, however, the Alfred Bauer Prize, which is the Silver Berlin Bear. So it didn't win the Golden, but it did win silver. At the Polish Film Awards, it was nominated for 6 awards, but it lost all of them. Most of them to the film Silent Night, which I'm going to have to see now because I'm very curious about. Silent Night won Best Film, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Cinematography, and Best Sound over Spoor. And, you know, our brilliant Agnieszka Mandat, our lead actress for this, was nominated for Best Actress, but she lost to Magdalena Bosarska for The Art of Loving, the story of Michalina Wisloka. So you know, what are you going to do?
But how about at the box office? I'm assuming that now you've put all of your research struggles behind you and you've been able to find all of the budgetary information that you need to make a compelling case for APPFM.
You know, the last film of our series, and yet again, I'm left with no budgets for these films of Agnieszka Holland. C'est la vie, what are you going to do? This film is an interesting one, though, because I think, Pete, this might be the first film that we've discussed on the show that never, in fact, had any theatrical release in the U.S. outside of film festivals.
Well, at least we know where the zero goes.
It's right. It's possible. I say that now. I'm thinking about, and I'm going to forget the name of the film. It was a listener's choice. It was the one with the woman in the big house, the kind of the religious themed film.
Viridiana, Louise Buñuel.
That may be the only film that comes close, because it was banned, and so it was only watched in secret screenings.
Secret screenings. We should all be so lucky.
Holland's crime film did open Poland February 24th, 2017. It did run in film festivals around the world for a year, including 6 domestic festivals over here. It opened in a few other countries, but it never really found much of an audience. It did earn just over $1 million at the international box office, which isn't much in today's dollars. I have to imagine it cost more than that, and I have to imagine it is at a loss. But otherwise, that is all I have.
Well, Andy, this is a surprising film for me to come out. I think I did end up liking the film. The question is, how far did the stars fall? Because I find Holland kind of an entrancing director so far. I do wish we maybe had shaken up the Holocaust movies and done a third film that would give us a little bit more breadth of her work. But I think that the first two were different enough Holocaust movies that we certainly got a picture of the kind of stuff she can do. I think she's a director who reminds me so much of her I just have personified her in this role of Agnieszka Mandat's, character in this movie, that now I have a hard time imagining her as anything else. She's a grandmother I would love my kids to have. She's got a crazy astrologer fan of the wolves, and
that's really funny. I didn't really think about that, but I'm like, there's something to that. The fact that she does feel like she's a little bit like her character Dusheko from this film. Like, I feel like there is this element within Holland and the way she tells her stories where she's not looking for just straight up telling you a story. She's looking for a way to tell a story that has a little bit more to it, whether it's the theme or a message or kind of an artistic push, whatever it is. I feel like there is more to her work, and I generally find her very compelling and want to watch more of her stuff, because I just think that she definitely... It's interesting that 2 of our recent directors that we've talked about, her and Spike Lee, I both feel have very clear artistic voices, the way that they choose to tell their films and the stories that they choose to tell. And I don't know, it excites me when I'm experiencing films like this, even if it's not a film that's like a straight up 5-star. I still just find this to be just an incredibly fascinating movie. Yeah.
I think you said something last week about her, the way she strives to sort of tell the story in a way that's approachable and real and authentic and detailed. And I think you get that even when she falls off that particular wagon, as she does in this movie. I think that those are intentional, right? You feel that sort of sense of intention that she's using it for a real approach, right? She has a purpose, and that was my experience of this movie. That the next day I already had new stuff to think about than that first watch, and that's what you count on. That's what you want.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
Let's take it to the map.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see all the movies we've talked about on this very show. If you swipe over in your show notes, you tap the word Flickchart. It should take you directly to this movie where you can add it to your catalog and see how it stacks up against ours.
First up, we have Spoor, or Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
Spoor, please.
I love me some Kevin Costner. I feel like I'm going to say Robin Hood right here. Oh, this is a rock, paper, scissors that determines determines whether we go to the top half or the bottom half of our chart with this movie.
All right, let's do it.
There's a lot riding this one. Here we go. One, two, three. Scissors. And it looks like Robin Hood takes it. Spoor goes to the bottom half. Spoor or The Brood?
Spoor.
Really? I was dead set you would say The Brood.
You know what, Andy? I would have normally if The Brood had been in the top half of our flick chart. But you have ensured that I will pick Spoor.
Well, I will pick The Brood here.
All right. Here we go.
There we go. One, two, three. Scissors.
Rock.
Scissors. Oh, Spoor takes it. Spoor or the Great Wall. I will take Spoor.
Okay. I will also
We
take
love
Spoor.
Zhang Yimou.
Yeah. But also, there
There's
are
the Great
other
Wall.
great Zhang Yimou movies.
That's right. I enjoy the Great Wall.
I do too.
It's
That's
kind of a
dancing on the
terrible,
side of the wall.
enjoyable
The yo-yo, beautiful
There's a
yo-yo
lot to
nights.
enjoy. There's a lot to roll your eyes at. Yeah. All right. Spoor wins that one. Spoor or Kind Hearts and Coronets. Oh.
You know what? I'm going to give that one to Kind Hearts.
I am too. It's a strong film. Spoor or Midnight Run. Oh, I got to go Midnight Run.
Yeah, I'd go Midnight Run too.
Spoor or The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. David Fincher's version.
David Fincher.
I will say The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Spoor or Field of Dreams. Got to go Field of Dreams.
I will go with Spoor.
Baseball, Ray.
All right. Oh,
Here we go. One, two, three.
Scissors.
Rock. Field of
Is
Dreams
what it
takes it.
is
Yep.
what
Spoor
it
or
is.
Once Upon a Time in America.
Um.
Oh. I'm going to say Spoor.
Yeah, I'll say Spoor too.
Spoor or The Producers. This is the musical retelling filmed
I'll go with The Producers.
from 2005, 2005.
From 2025.
I just cut some zeros out there. From the year 25. You're saying The Producers. I will too. I'm pretty
Where we
flexible
are
on this one,
now,
but you know
Andy, what does it even
it's okay.
matter?
At this guy, it's one spot. So Spoor landed in spot 279 out of 450. Not super high in our chart, thanks to me. But that's a 38%, little low.
That's
What are you
exceptionally
going to do?
low.
We've talked about a lot of great movies on our show.
I would very much like to hear you rationalize how low it is against your own ranking. Tell me it's higher than that.
It's definitely higher. It's still it's a tricky film. It's a film that I really appreciate. I can enjoy it, but it's not something that I would return to a lot. So it lost more than the other Holland films. I landed in spot 1404 out of 4327, which is a 68%.
Yeah, even that's too low. I did not have trouble ranking this one. And in fact, I felt at the end, I got to the end and I felt really good about where it exists on my chart. It landed at 201 out of 1447. That's an 86%.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. And if I were to go by the algorithm, I should be at 4.5 stars over this movie over at letterboxd.com/thenextreel. I'm not going to give it 4.5 stars. I'm feeling like this is a 4-star experience for me.
Okay.
And I don't know how it's going to age, but I will give it a heart.
I definitely give it a heart.
Maybe it's a heart that's been, recently shot and is bleeding out. I don't know. We'll see.
Bleeding all over the cold, snowy forest floor. 3.5 for me. With a heart, though, I really do enjoy this film. I think there's a lot of beautiful stuff in it. It's a tough story. It's an interesting story. I did find it really mesmerizing. And geez, I mean, Mandat herself deserves an extra half star.
Ugh.
She's just so stinking good in the film. I really, really I was like, I had never seen her before, but I was like, I want to see her in more stuff. She was just that good on screen.
Totally agree with you. So that means you're a 4-star then.
No. It probably would have been a 3-star
an
film.
extra half star.
Yeah, because 3-star.
Over 3.5.
Yeah, so if
Am I the only one who does math around here?
So anyway, 3.5 is where I am.
Okay. Where do we go from here? This is the end of our series. What is next?
I know at these series, these when we do these short series, we can. It's great to whip through them, but man, is it tough because I just want to keep going on about these people. But we are going to be doing quite a shift. We're going to be jumping over to a series we've done in the past, movies and their remakes, but we put a twist on it this time. We're looking specifically at French filmmaker Francis Weber and some of the films that he has done and the remakes of those. He's an interesting filmmaker in that he has a lot of movies that he has made over in France that have been remade over here in America, such as The Man with One Red Shoe, Buddy Buddy, The Birdcage, The Toy, Father's Day, Pure Luck, Three Fugitives, Dinner for Schmucks. We are going to be looking at 2 of those. We're going to look at the original La Cage aux Folles and then The Birdcage, and then we're going to look at Le Dîner de Con and Dinner for Schmucks. So starting with La Caja Fall from 78.
I'm excited about this one. This is one I have seen both of these. I think I've seen all of these movies. I think going into this, I definitely the La Caja Fall. We actually that was a delightful thing that my French teacher made me watch when The Birdcage came out. Which was a delightful little pairing. So I feel like I've already done this set.
I have only seen Dinner for Schmucks of these 4 films.
Wait a minute.
Which wasn't my favorite. So I'm curious to kind of dig into more of these.
You never saw The Birdcage?
No, I had the opposite experience of you. I had a professor who saw it, who is so offended by it that I was like, oh, well, okay, I guess I'll skip that one. And I just never bothered with it.
I don't even know what to make of this experience.
Yeah, I know.
I'm very frustrated.
It'll be a good experience to jump into these movies.
I hope in particular, I hope that one's still good. And it wasn't just me. Yeah, it wasn't just me with my memory playing tricks, because my memory of that movie was very high.
Yeah.
Oh, crud.
Well, I guess we'll find out, won't we?
When the movie ends.
Our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy?
Oh, boy, not today.
Not today. Rough going at Amazon. Not even a barrel to scrape the bottom of. But we were able to head back over to Letterboxd, our dear friends at letterboxd.com. And it turns out that people from all over the world had things to say about this movie and about how much they didn't like it.
Yeah, they just... it was fun looking at the different reviews in different languages to see what people really felt.
I don't know if this is going to be a new permanent thing that we do, but I'll tell you, I'm pretty excited about it today, is adding this extra element, this extra twist to our review segment, where we filter them through Google Translate and see how well the review translates both as a review and as a translation.
Indeed.
Your mileage may
vary. Do you want to go first, or shall I?
No, you go ahead.
All right, first up, I have a Turkish review from letterboxd.com by K. Koskun, who says, I'm not even going to try reading the Turkish because I don't speak that at all, but it translates to prolonged boredom. Check your phone charge.
Sometimes
I'm assuming that K. Koskun watched it on his phone or her phone.
Yeah, maybe. I have one that is from Mordecai, and it is a Portuguese review that I think really puts it just right when filtered through Google Translate. The scenery and photography are beautiful, but the plot is a mess to the point of being annoying. It is as if they had taken a professional ink and an expensive brush to draw a dick in the classroom wallet. Oh, that slays me, Mordecai.
You know, I'm going to just like that review just for
I did.
that.
I liked it.
Thanks,
hard.
Mordecai.
Thank you, Mordecai. Seal of approval. Thanks, Letterboxd. It's hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We are highlighting adaptations from Season 9 over at our Originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. That's the site where listeners can purchase the source material for all of our adapted film discussions.
We had a big Robin Hood series this season, looking at 9 different versions on screen. Many were likely adapted from Howard Pyle's The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, including Douglas Fairbanks in Robin Hood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Disney's Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, and the 1991 Robin Hood, and Ridley Scott's Robin Hood.
Robin and Marian was specifically based on the ballad The Jest of Robin Hood.
And we really don't have too much to say about Robin and the Seven Hoods.
We talked Dead Ringers for our David Cronenberg series adapted from Barry Wood and Jack Geeslin's novel Twins.
Have you checked out that show?
I haven't, but I've heard great things.
2 comedies from our Steve Martin series were adaptations, Pennies from Heaven from the BBC series, and The Lonely Guy from the book by Bruce J. Friedman.
The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas was part of our Colin Higgins series, adapted from the Broadway musical.
Spike Lee brought us Black Klansman from Ron Stallworth's memoir.
And we looked at a trio of John le Carré adaptations, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, The Little Drummer Girl, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Plus, all 3 movies in our Agnieszka Holland series were based on books, Europa, In Darkness, and Spoor.
La Cage aux Folles and its remake The Birdcage both came from Jean Poiret's original play.
We also talked about Arsenic and Old Lace and Charade in our Cary Grant series.
All of these were based on other material, and it is all available on our originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. Every book purchased supports the podcast.
Get the full list of adaptations we've covered and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.